What if you had a personal biomaker? Imagine a box, a biomaker. Ingredients go into the box, like sunlight, biocode, and air, and biological materials go out. You can think of this like a 3D printer, but with biology. And just as 3D printing changed the world of production, a personal biomaker could too. How many of you make things, create things, bake things? Let's consider baking. French bakers have mastered the art of warm rising dough. What's so amazing is they can take simple sets of ingredients, flour, salt, yeast, and water, and make all kinds of different breads, like a baguette. Add some milk, sugar, butter, and you can get to an entirely different set of breads, like my favorite, a croissant. Today, I'd like to tell you a story about a baker turned biomaker. And instead of mixing wet and dry ingredients to bake breads, biomakers mix wet and dry ingredients to make medicines, diagnostics, and materials. If you had a biomaker, what would you make? When would you use it? Where would you use it? How would it work? Could it enable anyone anywhere to access distributed biotechnologies for the good? Biotechnology is already all around us. Billions of RNA vaccines have been administered in the fight of COVID-19. Microorganisms can be used to make everything from biofuels to party dresses. And plants have been taught to glow in the dark and may someday replace nightlights in our homes. Yet, despite the promise of biotechnology, it remains highly centralized and expensive. It can cost billions of dollars to build a single centralized biomanufacturing plant. And these biomanufacturing plants often require cold chain or refrigeration in order to get the products that they make to the people that use them. What if we could rethink how we create biotechnologies and distribute them? Rather than produce a product in a single location and distribute it to its point of use, what if we could create more local, distributed biotechnologies? As a step towards distributed biotechnologies and biomaking, my research laboratory is focused on creating a new form of distributed, just add water biotechnology that, like our French baker, can transform simple ingredients into a variety of products. To understand this, we need to understand a little bit more about how biology works. At the heart of biology is the ability to program instructions in DNA. You can kind of think of DNA like a cookbook. It stores the instructions or recipes for biology. What to make, when to make it, how much to make of it. What's so cool about these instructions is that they can be transcribed to a temporary copy that we call RNA. You can think of this like your grandma's recipe card. And then this is translated into protein, the meal. So information flow in biology goes from DNA to RNA to protein. What do proteins do? Well, almost anything. They're the molecular doers of the cell. They give our bodies structure, they help us digest our food, they even help us fight disease. For decades, scientists have harnessed the ability to read, write, and edit DNA to program cells to do useful things, like make proteins. This has saved millions of lives through the production of medicines like insulin, and is combating climate change through the production of meatless meats. However, engineering cells to make useful products is hampered by the tug-of-war that exists between what cells want to do, typically live and survive, and what we want to do as engineers, have them make stuff. Put another way, yeast cells don't really care if they make insulin for us, and bacteria don't really care if they make sustainable carpets. Yet, this is the current approach. Scientists are working to domesticate living organisms, but engineering them is like trying to solve a puzzle, where every time you put a puzzle piece in, all of the other puzzle pieces change. My group, to address this challenge, is trying to create a new form of biotechnology. We call this cell-free synthetic biology. What is cell-free synthetic biology? Well, we take cells, we pull off their cell walls, and we collect their insides for use in biotechnology. You can kind of think of this like taking a car, lifting the hood up, and pulling the engine out to repurpose it. Doing so allows you to reuse the engine for different purposes without the constraints of the car chassis. For us, we're repurposing the engine of the cell without the constraints of the intact living organism. And this opens up a whole new world for biotechnology. This new world has some pretty cool features. First, freed from the need to sustain life, cell-free systems offer an unprecedented freedom of design to create and build biological systems. Second, cell-free systems allow us to produce products in hours to days, rather than weeks to months, as is typical for cell-based manufacturing processes, because we get to separate cell growth from product production. And finally, our cell-free systems are inherently distributable through freeze drying. You can kind of think of this like freeze-dried fruit or astronaut ice cream. Taken together, these three features set the stage for us to design anywhere and make everywhere with biotechnology. And I'd like to tell you how we're thinking about this in 3 vignettes that focus on developing the dry ingredients of a biomaker. These examples focus on medicine, water, and climate change. Let's start with medicine. Did you know that by 2050, it is projected that more people's lives will be threatened by antibiotic-resistant bacteria than are threatened today by cancer? One approach to addressing antibiotic-resistant bacteria is through vaccines. The idea is to teach your immune system to recognize the germs before they get inside of you. Conjugate vaccines do so by presenting the sugars that are typically displayed on the outside surface of bacteria to your immune system so that they recognize them as foreign. And these types of vaccines have been shown to be very safe and successful against numerous types of bacteria, including those that cause pneumonia. Historically, however, conjugate vaccines are produced using centralized facilities, and they require cold chain to get the vaccine to the patient. We've created a portable, just add water medicine-making platform that allows us to use freeze-dried, cell-free ingredients to make vaccines and bypass cold chain constraints. Thinking back to our baker, the key idea is to mix wet and dry ingredients, along with a recipe encoded in DNA that teaches these ingredients to make the vaccine. We've shown that this can work with several different vaccines against different bacteria, including those that cause diarrhea and death in children in low and middle income countries. How much vaccine can we make? Well, imagine you have a 1-liter carton of milk. In that single liter, in a day, we can make 40,000 doses. Now, put another way, if we wanted to make enough vaccine for the 2.7 million people in Chicago in just a day, it would take us 18 gallons. And right now, our manufacturing process has been developed in an inexpensive way where it costs about 50 cents a dose to produce these vaccines. We're pretty excited about this. And we've focused on the manufacturing challenge. We still need to address the purification and delivery challenge. But we're excited because we think this just add water biotechnology can promote better access to all kinds of medicines when using decentralized production. How else might we promote distributed biomanufacturing? Well, let's consider water. More than 2 billion people lack access to clean water. A key aspect of achieving safe and affordable drinking water for all is to be able to know when and where water is not safe to drink. Unfortunately, we can't often see or taste contaminants in water, and existing diagnostic strategies are typically slow and expensive. It turns out that biology has developed molecular machinery that can sense many of the contaminants in water that we care about for safety and quality. Inspired by easy-to-use diagnostic tests, like pregnancy tests or COVID tests, we sought to repurpose this molecular machinery in order to detect lead in water. Why lead? Well, there are many reasons. Most notably, there's no known safe level of lead in water. In addition, millions of Americans still get their water from lead pipes. Did you know that in Chicago alone, it's estimated that 400,000 lead service lines still connect to the Water City mains? So what we've done is, working with collaborators, we used our freeze-dried cell-free powders as before, but instead of programming them with a DNA recipe to make a vaccine, we now program them with a DNA recipe to act as a diagnostic. This recipe encodes a genetic circuit. If you think about a thermostat in your house during the winter, when the room gets cold, an electrical circuit is connected, and that turns on the heat. Similarly, we built a genetic circuit to control the process of DNA going to protein. In the absence of a water contaminant, the circuit is off. In the presence of a water contaminant, the circuit turns on, and it leads to a colorimetric output that is visible by eye. After optimization, this diagnostic can detect lead at the legal limit in about an hour for about a quarter. We're pretty excited about this, and this system, we believe, could potentially be in your hands within the next year, potentially allowing you to detect lead or other types of water contaminants in your own home in just minutes to hours. The third example I'd like to share today is about climate change. Climate change is linked to increasing amounts of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. Right now, most of the things that we use on a day-to-day basis, from toothbrushes to shoes, have been made from carbon-based chemicals that, when produced, release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. What if we could use biotechnologies to pull carbon out of the air and recycle that pollution into the things that we use every day? Amazingly, nature has already created some of these solutions. There are carbon-hungry microbes that have learned how to feed off of carbon in the air and grow. And working with collaborators, we created DNA programs that allowed us to teach these microbes to produce sustainable chemicals like disinfectants or jet fuels. Now, conventional petroleum-based processes that make these molecules typically emit 2 kilograms of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere for every kilogram of product that's produced. In our process, using biology, we actually take 2 kilograms of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, locking it into a kilogram of the product. We're translating these lessons to new-to-nature pathways in our freeze-dried cell-free powders, and are excited about the potential for these to spark new opportunities in planet health. So right about now, if I were in your shoes, I might be skeptical. And I get it. This all might sound too good to be true. You're taking a cell, you're ripping off its cell wall and collecting the insides. You add some ingredients to it. You freeze-dry it. You distribute it anywhere in the world. You add a DNA program. You just add water, and bam, you've made a product that benefits society. Well, I get it. I was surprised too. But we are beginning to show that this vision is possible. And there are some aspects, though, that we need to still address. From a technological perspective, we've focused on what goes into the biomaker, the freeze-dried powders and the DNA programs. We still need to work out all of the inputs and outputs. Another gap is education. We need to expand literacy in the ability to read and write DNA for all. Finally, creating a technology that has the potential to enhance and increase access to biotechnologies is inherently political and isn't going to change overnight. We need to develop new frameworks for governance, policy, and equity. I've shown you today that we can use freeze-dried, cell-free powders to make medicines in a day, detect lead in water in an hour, and produce sustainable chemicals from carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This is all quite exciting. But if you ask me, what excites me the most? It's this. It's about giving access to biotechnologies to everyone. No matter how much money you have, no matter what your social economical status is, and no matter whether or not your governments can afford it. This is what a personal biomaker can do. And at scale, that is powerful. If you had a personal biomaker, what would you make? And how would it change the world for good? Thank you.